Welcome to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're here because today we're unpacking a topic that has just completely exploded into the public health spotlight. We're talking about kratom, but more specifically, we're zeroing in on a highly potent metabolite called 7-OH and really digging into the hidden and frankly severe drawbacks of its use. We're going to rely on hard data, medical reports, and federal guidelines to give you a clear, factual look at exactly what this substance is doing.
Now, I want you to just picture this for a second. Could a supplement found sitting on the counter at your local gas station really be stronger than morphine? I mean, it sounds like a total exaggeration, right? We see these brightly colored packages, the gummies, the little drink shots, and they're marketed as these completely harmless, all-natural herbal supplements for a quick energy boost or pain relief. But when we pull back the curtain on the actual medical and chemical reality of what's inside some of these products, the contrast is honestly shocking.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Our roadmap for today. First, the Kratom Extract 7-OH. Then, we'll look at why it's stronger than morphine, cover the severe health and safety risks, discuss addiction and withdrawal, and finally, look at the regulatory response.
All right, Section 1, the Kratom Extract 7-OH. So, before we get deep into the drawbacks, we've got to establish the baseline chemical reality of the drug we're investigating. 7-hydroxymetrigenine, or thankfully 7-OH for short, is an active opioid-like metabolite that comes from the Southeast Asian kratom plant. Now here is a really crucial piece of context. 7-OH actually does occur naturally in the kratom plant, but only in very, very small trace amounts. We're talking less than 2% of the plant's total alkaloids. So the massive public health issue we're seeing today isn't really about someone chewing on raw kratom leaves. It's all about the modern, highly concentrated, and often semi-synthetic versions of 7-OH that are being engineered and pumped into these retail products.
And this perfectly highlights the massive difference we're dealing with. Over on one side, you have mitragynine. That's the abundant natural compound in the plant, which is generally associated with milder effects. But on the other side, we have 7-OH. Rare in nature, sure, but in the modern market, it's synthetically concentrated to become a highly potent opioid agonist. When scientists take mitragynine and oxidize it in a lab to create these massive levels of 7-OH, they are creating something that fundamentally changes how the drug interacts with the human body, specifically with our opioid receptors.
Moving right along to Section 2, stronger than morphine. So we're shifting from the basic chemistry to the actual measured potency of this concentrated extract. 13 times. Just let that sink in for a second. 13 times! According to animal studies and pharmacological data, 7-OH acts as an atypical opioid that binds so strongly to the brain's mu-opioid receptors that it can be up to 13 times more potent than morphine when it comes to pain relief and receptor binding. It's wild to think about. A substance you can just casually buy unregulated in a vape shop is chemically demonstrating a potency that far exceeds a Schedule II hospital narcotic.
Now, to ground that massive statistic in immediate public health reality, listen to this quote from the FDA Commissioner Dr. Marty Makary. He states plainly, 7-O is an opioid that can be more potent than morphine. We need regulation and public education to prevent another wave of the opioid epidemic. You see, this isn't just some theoretical laboratory curiosity. This is a real-world situation generating profound, impartial federal concern. The FDA is actively warning us that these concentrated products act exactly like opioids and carry severe, severe drawbacks.
Which brings us to Section 3, severe health and safety risks.
So, what does this extreme potency actually do to people in the real world? Well, this is where we start seeing the physical manifestations of the drug's toxicity. By July of 2025, U.S. poison centers had received 1,690 reports of kratom exposure. Think about that. Just halfway through the year, that number had already blown past the total for all of 2024. And out of those cases, 165 reports were specifically tied to 7-OH alone. It's a rapidly accelerating crisis. Of the patients exposed strictly to 7-OH, 35% experienced serious health problems, and a staggering 67% had to be treated at a healthcare facility.
When people end up rushing to the ER after taking these highly concentrated products, what exactly are they going through? The symptoms are incredibly severe. Poison Control is tracking acute agitation, deep confusion, rapid heart rate, dangerously high blood pressure, trouble breathing, and even seizures. In the Midwest, for example, agencies tracking high-intensity drug trends are absolutely sounding the alarm. Over in Kansas, Johnson County reported the second highest rate of EMS calls for 7-OH-related overdoses in the entire region. Missouri Poison Control tracked dozens of exposure reports in a very short window. People are testing positive for 7-OH alongside other illicit drugs, and in some tragic instances, it's leading to fatal overdoses.
Now let's look at Section 4, Addiction and Severe Withdrawal.
Okay, as if the immediate toxicity wasn't scary enough, we have to talk about the long-term trap here. Because 7-0 so effectively targets those opioid receptors, chronic use leads to a very predictable and extremely painful physical dependence. And this right here dispels a very dangerous myth. Because kratom is often marketed as just an herb, a lot of users think quitting is just a matter of, sleeping it off for a day. That is absolutely not the case with concentrated 7-0. The withdrawal reality completely mimics traditional opioid withdrawal. Patients are reporting grueling body pain, uncontrollable tremors, severe vomiting, prolonged insomnia, and just crushing anxiety. In fact, to avoid this horrifying withdrawal, some users find themselves pushed toward illicit opioids, like fentanyl-contaminated street drugs, literally just to make the pain stop.
Because this physical dependence is so intense, medical professionals universally agree that suddenly stopping cold turkey without any supervision is highly risky. Medical detox is widely considered the safest option. And because 7-OH acts directly on those opioid receptors we talked about, clinical evidence is showing that medication-assisted treatment, or MAT, is incredibly effective. Supervised tapers using drugs like buprenorphine, which you might know by the brand name Suboxone, are actually yielding really successful results in helping patients safely manage their withdrawal and maintain long-term remission.
Finally, let's wrap up with Section 5, the regulatory response.
So, given the soaring hospitalizations, the severe addiction data, and just the sheer undeniable potency of 7-OH, how is the law keeping up? Well, over the summer of 2025, we saw a massive, lightning-fast acceleration in government action. In June, the FDA fired off warning letters to 7 companies for illegally distributing 7-OH products. By July, the FDA took the huge step of formally recommending that the DEA classify 7-OH as a controlled substance. And state governments? They didn't wait around for the federal gears to turn. By August, Florida enacted an emergency rule banning concentrated 7-OH entirely, classifying it as a Schedule I substance, while notably leaving natural kratom leaf legal.
And that leaves us with today's incredibly chaotic regulatory map. Just looking strictly at the facts on the ground, the legal status depends entirely on where you happen to live. In states like Alabama, Indiana, and Arkansas, all kratom and 7-OH is completely illegal. It's a full ban across the board. In states like Florida, as we just mentioned, natural kratom is legal, but that 7-OH isolate is banned. Then you have places like Georgia and Utah that have implemented Kratom Consumer Protection Acts, meaning they strictly regulate labeling and limit exactly how much 7-OH can be in a single product. And then places like Tennessee are taking a different route, specifically targeting the synthetic 7-OH derivatives. It's a rapidly shifting patchwork of laws, all just trying to contain one highly potent substance.
Which really leaves us staring down this vital, final question. As synthetic 7-OH products continue to outpace regulations, how will we prevent another wave of the opioid epidemic? We've seen the hard data. We understand the 13 times morphine potency. We know about the severe withdrawal risks and the skyrocketing emergency room visits. The science is absolutely clear on the drawbacks of concentrated 7-OH. Now the challenge falls squarely to consumers, medical professionals, and lawmakers to navigate this emerging threat. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I really hope this structured look brought you some real clarity on what is definitely a complex issue. Keep asking questions and keep learning.